Hello, everybody, and welcome to Budget 2021, Reviving the Growth Engines. And this is a virtual roundtable discussion where we've got some of the top experts in the auto industry are going to be outlining what they are hoping to hear from the budget, maybe some of the things they're hoping they will not hear, and also an assessment of where things overall stand. So I'm Vikram Chandra, founder of Editorji, and we have a fantastic panel of thought leaders with us. What is it that the auto industry really needs to recover from the economic shock that they have seen? A boost is required, but what is this boost going to need? And what is it that they realistically think the finance minister could provide? Which of the initiatives are going to be most crucial? So we have a fantastic panel of experts joining us. Very pleased to welcome and to introduce Shashank Srivastava, Executive Director at Maruti Suzuki. We have Balbir Singh Dhillon, the head at Audi India, and Satyakam Arya, Managing Director and CEO at Daimler India Commercial Vehicles. Thank you all so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Before I dive into the budget itself, right, and what we are expecting in the budget, just wanted to get your sense of the state of play right now. I mean, like, how bad has it been? Are things getting any better? Who wants to go first? Satyakam, I guess it's been particularly challenging in commercial vehicles. So why don't I get you to start?
Sure. Thank you, Vikram. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Well, it has been quite challenging even before COVID came. We operate in the medium and heavy commercial vehicle space, and this segment was dramatically affected way back in 2019 itself. The reasons that time were the implementation of the axle load norms, which simply meant that each truck could carry 25% extra load, and not the new trucks which are sold, but the trucks which were already on the road since years. That definitely led to the slowdown in the industry, and 2019 finished 35% below 2018. And then, of course, came COVID, due to which we have seen a massive contraction in demand. By the time December ended, the industry contracted by another 60% on top of the contraction we saw in 2019. So it has been quite challenging in the last 2 years, and we're really hoping that with the budget and with the adequate push from the government, we can hope for a quick recovery of demand.
Yeah, of course, that does presuppose that there will be a push. I'm sure there will be, but I do think that health warning is required. That assumes that there is going to be a push. I'm sure the finance minister is listening to this and listening to your views. So let's see. Budget's probably printed by now, but still. Shashank, let me just turn to you because, Maruti, Suzuki out there, so many millions of people buying cars. How's this year been, and how's the next year looking to you right now? Have things started to bounce back? Are people buying cars again?
Yeah, so it's been a sort of very good last quarter for us. In fact, today we released the Q3 results, and we saw some healthy growth on the top line as well as bottom line. But, similar to what the previous panelist Satyakam said, actually, last year for auto industry, the passenger vehicles was a negative, almost 18%. And the first quarter this year was a disaster in the sense that April was zero sale. That was the first time ever in the Indian auto industry that you had zero sales in a month. Q1 was like a minus 80 for the industry. H1 was down about 34-35%. But the recovery started sometime in Q2 onwards, and month on month, we have seen a good recovery. Monsoons have been pretty good. Rabi crop was the record last year. Kharif sowing has been pretty good. Monsoons are 9% up, and even I'm told Rabi crop sowing this time is also pretty good, about 3% up. So the rural bounce back started, and in Q3 the urban also we saw a good bounce back, with the result that we get some sort of a misleading scenario where people think that since there has been a month-on-month increase, Q3 has been good, so the industry is back to normal. It's not. So if you compare April, December for this year with the previous year, we're still 33% off those highs. So the year 18-19 was actually the benchmark year where we had 3.4 million car sales in the industry. And this year we are looking at an ending with about 2.62 to 2.65, assuming Q4 goes well. And of course, next year, as you asked, next year in growth terms could be good because, this base effect for this year has been pretty low. And I can tell you, we joke around that we will definitely grow in April because last April was zero. So whatever we do in April, we will show growth. And for that, I'm completely confident. But the auto sales depends not only on the state of the economy. There's a very high correlation between the GDP per capita growth and the auto industry growth. But it depends also on the sentiment, because in economic terms, it's a discretionary purchase. And the sentiment on the COVID is though a little better, and I think that's also giving a positive, sort of feeling. But it could go anyway. So we do believe that there is a lot of things which need to be done for the industry to get back to the levels which we saw 2 years back. So in fact, if you look at the April-December this year, it's the lowest in the last 10 years actually. So a lot of things have to be repaired. Fortunately, industry and the Indian customer has shown great resilience, and they're much better than what we expected actually. And our supply chain, which was ruptured in the first quarter, has sort of bounced back. Some great work done by our vendors, our dealers. So I'm quite hopeful for a good year next year, but it all depends on the economic growth and also on the sentiment going forward.
Right, important point you're making out there, that even if you think things are recovering, it's going to take some time to get back to where we were even just a couple of years ago. Forget about what way we would have been if COVID had not actually happened. But let me turn to you, because there's a certain perception, right or wrong, that all of this is very well, but the rich have only got richer and are actually doing quite well despite COVID. And as a result of that, the sort of people who are buying Audis are probably not concerned too much about what's happening in the broader economy. So how are you doing? Are your sales rocking or no? You're also well off the highs?
So first of all, good evening, Vikram, and thanks for inviting, and good wishes to you and the panelists and all the viewers for a good 2021 and a healthy one. That is most important. I think I'm not going to repeat what has already been said by the panelists. We all have gone through one of the toughest times in our professional lives. Even luxury segment has actually plummeted to almost 10 years back. We have degrown in 2019 and we have degrown in 2020 as well. So we are almost at the lowest points. Very important to mention is that the luxury segment actually contributes to only about 1% of the overall automotive industry, while it contributes to almost 10% of the revenues which government generates. But this has not grown for last many years, primarily because of very high taxations. The taxation, the duty structure, and the registration costs are extremely high, and they have only been going higher and higher for past many years, leaving the industry to almost like 1% or even below in 2020. But coming back to your question, that whether the luxury customers have been impacted, of course they are. You have to understand that most of our buyers do come from business community, and most of the businesses were impacted. Not all of them, because some sunshine industries are also doing well, but most of the businesses have not been doing well. So we are also waiting for the businesses to come back on track. But yes, for last quarter, the quarter is starting October, November, December. Month after month, the sales have been growing. In fact, for us, December was the best month of 2020. But you have to also understand that this has been on the back of low performance of the whole industry in 2019, followed by 2020. Many months we had very less number of sales. So it is growing, but at a low base. We need to really work hard, and also need a push from government to take the industry to a higher levels. So it is not easy, but I'm sure it is. At least the outlook is positive. It is on an upper trail, I would say, and I hope it continues to be like that.
So let me turn then to the question of what we are actually expecting in the budget. And would you be keeping your eye more on steps that will be taken to revive the economy in general and to get the economy up and running again? Or would you be hoping for something specific for the auto sector? Shashank, do you want to go first this time? Which of the two would you be hoping?
So actually both of it, because as I said, the auto industry is very closely correlated with economic GDP per capita growth. In fact, Vikram, the correlation factor is 0.9865 over the last 30 years. So that is a very high correlation. So I would expect that anything which, any budget, which any provision which makes the economy grow will be positive for the auto industry. Yes, there are some specific points which probably can be taken up. One, of course, is that when we talked about last year coming down from the previous highs, and last year was 18% down, assuming this pandemic period is unusual and in a unprecedented year. Let's talk of last year itself. The cost of acquisition of vehicle went up substantially for three reasons. First reason was the regulatory conversion on BS4 to BS6. Which was done last year, and that added to the cost. Second was there has been over a period of time steep increases in the road taxes, the insurance taxes, the GST itself is quite high. So anything, an Indian consumer, because our GDP per capita is actually quite low. So in PPP terms, it's less than $4,000. So if we are very sensitive to prices, and therefore anything which helps in bringing down the cost of acquisition. So if something like a GST comes down, it's very good. But we do realize that while the industry will be clamoring for that cost reduction in terms of the cost of acquisition, but I know the government of India would have fiscal constraints. They have to look at other side, also the other industries. We are talking only of auto industry. They also have to look at the social sector. They have to take care of a lot of other investments in the general economy. So while the industry probably would welcome anything which will reduce the cost of acquisition, but I'm not so sure whether it's possible given the constraint. But one thing which is possible, and I think quite practical to do, is to bring in the scrappage policy, which means that the older vehicles or the less efficient vehicles or the more polluting vehicles can be off the road. That can be a spur in the demand for new cars because the old vehicles will be off the road. It will also save a lot of fuel for the country because these vehicles are more fuel efficient than newer ones, and the newer vehicles will therefore consume much less oil. So those are the sort of things which we expect. We also expect that the hybrid vehicles will be given some sort of a support, as was done earlier, because that is definitely the way towards electrification for the future. So I think some of these out of the box sort of ideas should also work, including, for example, giving the interest paid on car loans to be deducted from income tax calculation. That's also a possibility. But anything basically to bring the cost of acquisition down, I think would be very good for the industry.
So obviously, Balbir, if I turn to you next, that you were just referring to that especially in the luxury segment, the amount of taxes is very high and it contributes very significantly to the cost of one of those vehicles. I'm not sure whether you're expecting that this is going to be the budget where she will actually reduce that, right? Because obviously this will be one budget where they'll say that we have a lot of constraints, we have to spend money, we have to worry about health, we have to do other stuff. So conversely, are you fearing that this would be one of the first places where they may come out with more taxes? In fact, the luxury, the rich can afford it, so increase the taxes out here rather than reduce it.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the way I would want to answer you is, I think most important for us is a stable policy regime. What is happening is from time to time, there are newer and newer regulations that are coming. And, the luxury segment are overall requirement of the time for making any change in our product pipeline is between 9 to 12 months. So what we expect and request government is to give us a long-term policy so that we can follow the same and we can decide which products we got into the country and which products no. That is the first part. Second is, of course, we understand that it's tough time. It may not be possible for the government to reduce the taxes, but there are other ways wherein the demand can be improved. Like most of other cars which our customers do buy, it's a very emotional buying in the luxury space. And if the business is overall, if the sentiment is positive, we will sell more cars. There are also things which are positive, I would say. Let's say, for an example,